I define leadership as somebody in a position of great responsibility. Existentially, we're all in a position of responsibility, but this is a special one, I think, so it's worth talking about. I want to start with this because we're living in unprecedented times. Lots of things are happening. The future is open. Little is certain. The stakes really are enormous. We've seen global developments, especially in recent times, have really shaken us as people, and it's shaken countries, it's shaken politics. We live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world in which we can't often predict what's happening, and yet as human beings we're trying to create some certainty when we make decisions. But this world characterized by global movements, by nauseating development in science, nanotech, biotech have been developing so fast. Artificial intelligence will surpass the computing power of our brain within our lifetimes. So there's enormous changes that we're facing as people, as countries. And so in this 21st century, we need a new kind of leader. We have those kind of leaders already, but we're still having a lot of leadership in place that is perhaps not conducive to a future-proof, well, we say proof, but to a future that we can flourish into, rather than being stuck on old structures that may not be helpful. So in these kind of turbulent times, I believe it is time for a leader who's more existentially aware, approaching their leadership position, their position of responsibility with this kind of mindset, and developing a skill set that is helping moving into that kind of future, and helping groups of people to move forward. So that's why I want to talk a little bit about what are some of these hidden challenges for the leader, particularly the individual. We're living in this context of the 21st century, but I want to shine a little bit of a light on what are the hidden challenges for the individual and how might they be able to prepare themselves better for moving into leadership positions, or how can they deal with these global challenges, but on an individual level, so that they can then go and create a culture and the climate of positive change and moving into this uncertain VUCA world with a positive attitude. So I want to look at philosophy a little bit and talk about psychology a little bit. Obviously, we can only scratch the surface in this kind of talk. But I want to introduce you to the Pearl, the positive, existential, authentic, resilient leader, and how they navigate, pun intended. So this is Monica Hanaway. She wrote 2 books on existential leadership, and she points out to us that the challenges of the leader are not just behavioral, they're psychological and they're philosophical. And she also points us to the fact that any leader, any manager, any leader, anybody in a position of responsibility is first and foremost a human being, and they're not always rational. They deal with the same challenges that any other human being is dealing with, being human in the world with other people, which is our existential condition. So they're driven by emotions, aspirations, fantasies, and they influence the way that they lead on an everyday basis. So it's worth looking into that, and it's often not looked into enough. So for the individual, anybody who's been in a leadership position, and I think if we all reflect on it, we're all in a leadership position of sorts. There is something about feeling connected. We have this natural human need to feel connected, and it can be quite lonely at the top. It's difficult for other people to really get what kind of position we're in, even if it's somebody else who's also in a leadership position. They can't really get our particular context, the way that we're wired, the way that our organization, our environment works. So they're carrying responsibility in the face of uncertainty. We make choices, and we make sometimes having to make impossible choices in the face of not really knowing whether this is right or wrong what we're choosing. We often know too much as a leader in this position, we have a lot of information, often more information than other people. But at the same time, we know too little because we can't possibly know enough to be absolutely certain, if we're honest to ourselves, that the path that we are taking is actually the right path and leads us to our desired outcomes. The world is characterized by a sense of uncertainty, both in physics and in philosophy. The leader is often expected to be a Superman, Superwoman, an Übermensch, as Nietzsche called it, to make all these decisions, have all of this knowledge, and to often expected to be cheerful and optimistic, even in the most dire circumstances. So it can be really difficult to be authentic when we are struggling and our organization is vulnerable, but we have to show strength, for example. As a leader, we're expected to create meaning. One of our main functions as a leader is to create meaning and purpose for people, so they're protected from this existential void of not really knowing what their meaning is as a person or as a species, where we're going. The meaning of life, the big meaning, is elusive at best, and we can't really know it. We have to have faith in it. And a leader is expected to provide this kind of faith so that people can follow them and live a meaningful existence. So it's really difficult to remain authentic when we're faced with these conflicting needs of, for example, different generational needs, or if we have a very diverse crowd in our organizations, there's people from different cultural backgrounds, different ways of thinking, different upbringings. And so people approach the leader with different wants and needs, and it can be difficult for the leader to embody an authentic appearance and course of action when we're faced with that. We have these basic human needs to feel seen, heard, valued. Stephen Covey talked about the need to live, learn, love, and leave a legacy. And these can often be held within us. It's difficult to be integral and authentic, to be coherent in what we're putting out there and how we behave, how we make decisions. The work of Linda Hill points us to the cost, both financial and human, when we're not preparing our managers and leaders for these kind of positions of responsibility. So she talks about the process, the learning to lead, as something we're not really preparing our leaders well enough for. And from my coaching work, I know that many leaders already in leadership positions, they're still struggling with that. Jerry Colonna talks about the inevitable loneliness of being at the top, and how we really need to focus on the process that is becoming a leader. We're always in the process of becoming. So he suggests to develop a philosophy of management, of leadership, and to live it, to embody it, to really tune into that. But I think one of the main challenges here for organizations is that it's some derivative of this. People in positions of responsibility, probably at your organization as well, who don't feel like they know what they're doing, or they have confidence or sufficient confidence in where they're going and the decisions that they make, but they feel they can't really share that. Brené Brown's work on vulnerability is incredibly important here. But if people don't feel like they are able, or that it's appropriate to kind of grapple with these issues of uncertainty and other inner conflicts in leadership, if we expect it to be that kind of Übermensch, then it comes with certain problems that emerge within the leader without actually having a place where they can process these. So I believe these universal leadership principles, some of these leadership principles are universal, especially at an existential level, because regardless whether you're the head of a country, the head of an organization, or, well, perhaps the head of your own body, as human beings, existentially, all of us are in a position of responsibility. So this is where the existential philosophy comes in. Existentialists have argued that these four areas of freedom, isolation, meaninglessness, and death and endings, temporality, this is what we all share as people. And I think they are particularly pertinent when we get into a leadership position where arguably the decisions that we make affect a lot more people, so the responsibility weighs more heavy on us. The sense of freedom that we get from getting to choose, getting to make the decisions, at the same time having to choose. Sartre talked about we are being condemned to be free, and that there is a weight to that. So we all carry this as human beings, but particularly as leaders. I talked about the isolation at the top. Nobody can really get what we're going through. It's even if we've been with the same therapist for 20 years, the same partner for 20 years, they might have a lot of connection with us, and they might show a lot of empathy, but truly really knowing what it's like to be me, it's impossible. So that's why existentially it's lonely to be a person. We're grappling with absurdity in leadership positions. Often we're expected at the lower leadership positions to enforce decisions that we may not agree with. So we grapple with that kind of sense of authenticity. But also we are forging a path. We're creating vision statements. We're painting a future where we aspire to go and have decided that this is going to be an aspirable future. But we're creating meaning in the face of nothingness, in the face of a meaninglessness of the whole world, because you can't really know whether that is meaningful as a whole. We just have that kind of faith that this is something that is worth going towards. But ultimately, while we're faced with some person who disagrees with us and shows us that that perhaps may be the wrong meaning. So there's always an argument around that. And death, and death meaning the ultimate ending, we're facing endings all the time. A existential leader is acutely aware of the importance of time and temporality. Any crisis can end a person's leadership, a company, an organization. In the startup space, this is particularly pertinent. The awareness, the acute awareness that things could be over. COVID has shown us that whole industries can collapse within a matter of weeks. If we're aware of that, it brings up for me right now a certain sense of anxiety that when we are present with it, we can allow ourselves to feel, but the instinct is to make it go away. So the existential leader protects us from these existential concerns. The existential leader protects people from their sense or the anxiety that pops up when we tune into our freedom, the uncertainty of the world, endings, the meaninglessness of the world, and our initial isolation. So they provide a meaningful project. They invite us to follow them. They offer a set of values or a vision to believe in that people can sign up for, that gives them a sense of meaningful living and of movement. They help us bridge uncertainty and doubt, and they ask a set of more profound and deeper questions, both themselves as also the organization. So that brings me to that leadership model I've developed a couple of years ago, where that depicts these elements of existential dimensions that come with a leadership position or with the human condition, indeed. So that sense of uncertainty, isolation, endings, temporality, dilemmas that we're faced with, not just because of our human condition, but because of the uncertainty of the world. There's so many defense mechanisms that I see at play in my coaching work with people in leadership positions of responsibility. These automatic responses of not perhaps looking where we need to look because it would shake the ground of our certainty and confidence. It takes a lot of courage to engage with our leadership position from an existential angle. Ultimately, I think it's the stronger course of action. To accept the anxiety that comes with it, and perhaps learn to embrace it, is the path towards living as authentically and leading as authentically as we can. We can at best weave in and out of it, as everybody who's attempted it will know. So how's this positive, you might ask? Well, Kim Cameron describes positive leadership as a leader who fosters a positive climate, who develops positive relationships, who provides meaning and reinforces it, and who engages in positive communication. And if we approach leadership in our existential leadership condition with a positive attitude and with a set of skills that can allow us to embrace and accept, not just accept and manage, but to embrace and engage in and enjoy this leadership condition, which is not always comfortable. It's a lot of weight on us. But if we can manage to approach it from that kind of attitude and that set of skills, then we will be fostering a positive climate. Not one that is characterized by lots of positive emotions and blind optimism, but one that is characterized by a realness and authenticity, a strength in the vulnerability. And that creates more positive relationships with people who are in your vicinity, people who are following, people who are in your top circles, because they know that you have the courage to actually face your existential leadership condition and the human condition of the world as a place where there is little certainty, and that is okay. It's actually not just okay, it's something that we can value and embrace as the stuff that makes life and leadership and being in organizations exciting. Because if we would know everything, it would be pretty boring. If everything would be predictable, there would, well, be a lot of money, but there would probably not be a lot of excitement in it. A world where everything's predictable is simply not imaginable. They create meaning in a stronger way, because it's not blind to the realities of the world, and it's accepting and embracing difference, diversity, and conflict as something that can help innovation. So there's a lot there. I won't go into the details of these. There's a lot of positive psychology, a lot of touch points to positive psychology. And those of you who are familiar with the science will notice the elements of psychological well-being, of flourishing and PERMA, of Carol Dweck's works on mindset. There's a lot about resilience, post-traumatic growth, innovation. So I'll leave it at that. Please do contact me if you want to have some more information on this. This is my gyro model. This acts both as a way of being a leader, as I refer to, and a set of skills, because it is about noticing the existential themes that underlie the impact on your performance and your well-being. It's about accepting that they exist, rather than like giving into the urge to make them go away, to make yourself feel comfortable. Don't fight the inevitable. These themes, they will come up and we will be facing them. There will be boundary situations where we run into challenges with freedom, meaninglessness, and isolation. It's about relating these experiences and these themes to your individual context, and then become aware of patterns and dominant themes within that. So you develop a sense of self-awareness around these themes and how they pop up for you. Most importantly, perhaps for the positive existential leader, is to value that discomfort and embrace anxiety and any sort of negative, so-called negative feelings as a teacher, as a good teacher, a springboard into authentic leadership, if you will. It allows you to engage positively with emotions that can be quite difficult to sit with. You might grow from the experience and anticipate growth pains, which is important, because that is the stuff that builds the existential resilience. If you talk these elements through, and if you're acknowledging and accepting this, your existential leadership condition, you will be able to develop that kind of resilience, so that in times of crisis, you may not be paralyzed, but you will grow and move forward and present a positive attitude towards it, which will be infectious to your people. Achievement and greatness is a process. It's not a one-off result. This is something we need to continuously do, so that we may learn to trust our instincts and continuously choose to embrace these difficult decisions, which will allow us to actually engage and enjoy our leadership position. And that will have a hugely positive effect on the people that surround us. If we have a leader who's quiet and charismatic, who's working with others, who's creative, who is optimistic and hopeful, but not as a matter of certainty and delusion, but as a matter of having confidence in their decisions at the time, trusting their instincts, and having decided that a vision is meaningful and worthwhile, but being open to the possibility of changing their minds and doing that with grace. Somebody who's open and confident, resilient, somebody who embodies positive existential leadership and is compassionate towards the people that surrounds them, get to know the values and beliefs of their people, who embody the values and beliefs of themselves and as the organization. So you may be familiar with the listener by James Christensen, and I modified it a little bit to show the leader that I'm imagining in this, because it's somebody who keeps calm, who keeps listening, but who also keeps it real. So somebody who's authentic, somebody who can go out and be a strong leader, but at the same time is a reflective leader, somebody who's in tune and in touch with their own condition, with other people's human condition, and somebody who can take us and lead us through a volatile, uncertain, and complex and ambiguous world. And it is fertile ground for integration, and this is the last thing I'm going to say. This is not in a lot of conflict with other leadership models or theories, but I see this as the foundation for other techniques, for other theories, for other ways of being, to be integrated into this. So I think any leader would do good to acknowledge, accept, embrace, and value their human condition, their leadership condition, and take that as a way to move forward. And that's me. Thank you very much. If you want to stay in touch, I'd love to hear from you. And thank you for giving me the time, Claudia, and love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yannick, and some thanks for coming through on the chat box as well. And thank you, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. That was very, very insightful and timely, I must say. So thank you and enjoy. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Yannick.